Tonight I'm joined by Adam Roberts, who has flagged his intention to stand for a position of councillor in the Port Macquarie Hastings elections come September. G'day, Adam.
Evening, Tim.
Good to have you in. So, listen, you've already fired your first shot in your campaign, effectively. You've challenged state members Leslie Williams and Andrew Stoner to immediately halt the addition of fluoride into local water supplies. Tell us why.
Well, I guess the main reason is that back in 1991, the community already went to a referendum vote on the issue of fluoride. At that vote, if you like, 70% of the population said they would prefer not to have fluoride in the water. I know the population was about 50,000 people back then, and 70% represents about 35,000 people who said no at the time. So I haven't heard any argument or any suggestion that those views had changed over the last 20 years.
Now, that was back in 91, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
And it was, to my knowledge, it was when we went to the polls to vote for our councillors. At the same time, they slipped an extra question in there about fluoride.
They did.
And it was a mammoth amount, wasn't it? Like you said, something like, what was it, 70%?
It was approximately 71% said they'd prefer not to have fluoride in the water.
That's right. So we've got a precedent for a vote on the issue in this area, and then all of a sudden our last bunch of councillors actually voted to have fluoride put in the water, but we weren't given the vote at that stage. So it just doesn't add up, does it? There was a precedent about us having a choice over this issue. It's been snatched away without explanation.
That's the way I read it. I guess the challenge I have for Leslie Williams and Andrew Stoner was more in the respect of let's have a look at the history of this issue in particular. Their statements before the election were directing the argument towards the community having a vote to decide again if they wanted fluoride in the water.
Well, in fact, Adam, before Leslie Williams was the state member, she came in onto this show when she was campaigning, and of course she ended up winning the seat. Here's what she had to say back prior to the election.
Look, I'm not going to get into a debate about whether or not we should have fluoridation. I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on it. Certainly I've read the material that they've given me, and on the other hand, I've read material that says, the opposite. So again, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to sit here and debate it with you. On
an issue as humongous as fluoride in our local water, one that can affect the health of our children, our families, can you make a commitment here tonight that if you were the state member, you'd bring that decision back to the community and let us vote on it?
I certainly can't make that commitment tonight. As I said, I acknowledge those concerns that people have had. I've expressed to them the concerns that I have, that in the past, there was a view by this community. Look, it's certainly something that continued to be discussed and keep on the table. But as you know, Tim, it's not too far away that is going to take place. I know that Andrew Stoner made some representation on behalf of that group about what options there were for people who, for health reasons, couldn't have the fluoride in their water, I can continue to consult with him on that.
And that was Leslie Williams prior to the last state election, talking about fluoride, not really giving much of an answer either way. Fluoride is, of course, already been drip-fed into the water supply here in Wauchope, apparently, and it's not far away from being mainstreamed into all water supply in the Hastings area. Now, Adam, I think we need to make it clear here that there are two separate issues at play. That one is the debate about the potential dangers or not about fluoride, and the other is the right of a community, any community, to have a sense of self-determination, to actually be allowed to vote on specific issues which often cause divisions, such as fluoride. Is that basically where you're coming from on this as well?
Where I'm coming from is trying to put myself in the position of a councillor if elected. The things that I would be looking for is a for and against argument, and the numbers attached to those. So all I can go on is the 1991 poll, which a majority said no at that time. I haven't seen any large numbers trying to reverse that decision or change their view. But what I have seen is a lot more people opposed to having fluoride in the water. So I'm trying to look at it from a number of angles, but having a look at it from a state perspective, sure, Leslie and Andrew cannot call a referendum on the issue. That should be left to the local government to make that decision. Seeing as though we don't have an elected council at the moment, my view would be just to put the whole project on hold until the community was polled again, pending enough support for that to go ahead. So
well, it certainly makes sense to me. Now, we've got people trying to call in. You need to call 658 6585 3456. Otherwise, we can't take your call because there are two numbers here. It can be confusing sometimes. 6585 3456 is the number if you want to reach us here. Adam, just as a matter of principle, just how important is it for the people of the Hastings to resolve this issue, the issue of fluoride, themselves by way of a vote?
It's a good question. I would encourage everyone that does have an opinion on the topic to voice their concern in a I guess a civil way, by signing a petition or writing a letter to the state members to represent their views to the health minister. There's quite a few ways you can go about trying to make your voice heard. I'd never advocate a protest or a rally or anything like that in particular, but petitions are.
You don't think there's a place for that in this case?
It's a tricky one.
We save the foreshore that way.
Well, there was about 18,000 signatures on that particular petition, which, again, my preference would be to have as many people sign a petition as possible.
Oh, there's been plenty of petitions, and in fact, if people listening want to sign that, and by the way, if I'm sounding rather biased, people who listen to this show regularly will know I'm on the record, we are anti-fluoride show, and I should have said that at the top of this segment. So if people do want to sign the petition against fluoride, gwarehouse.com.au. It's a business here in Port Macquarie that's spearheading the campaign against fluoride. And really, not only the campaign against fluoride, but the right for us to vote on it. If the majority of people in Port Macquarie wanted fluoride in the water, I would live with that. I just think it's so disrespectful for politicians to tell me and tell all of us what has to happen in this particular case. I think it's disgraceful. Interestingly, Adam, you've stated you won't be drawn on the subject about your personal opinion about fluoride. Why is that?
Probably a little bit out of context there. I'm more than happy to have a personal opinion, but as far as a councillor's opinion, I would see a councillor representing the voice of the community. Mm-hmm. So my opinion, if you like, would be a personal decision which way I'd go. And I'd be more than happy to suggest that I'm fully against the fluoridation in the water. But my voice as a single individual has to be put with, the communities as well. So my personal opinion should be kept separate to what the voice of the community is. So if there's a majority of the community voting for or against an issue, my opinion alone shouldn't supersede the community at large, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it does, and I think that's rather admirable, actually. Basically, you're saying that it doesn't matter what your opinion is, you want to represent the majority of constituents in the local council area. However, what I'd like to put to you is the situation that happened with our last group of councillors, where we weren't given the vote, but the councillors themselves, 12 men and women, had to make up our minds about this issue. If you were one of those councillors, 10, 12, however many it ends up being, how would you vote on the issue of fluoride? Let's just make it really clear.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to be perfectly clear. On the information that I have at the moment, I would suggest that the 1991 poll is the basis for my decision. I haven't seen any poll to suggest that sentiment's changed. So therefore, based on that particular poll in particular, I would definitely vote no for fluoride in the water. I don't think I can make it any clearer than that, and to suggest that that's the basis of my opinion. If elected.
I'm really pleased that you've put that opinion out there, because when I asked Leslie about it, she just wouldn't give me an answer. And Leslie and we get along really well. I have a lot of respect for Leslie, but she did frustrate me prior to the last state election when she just wouldn't say if she would bring the vote to the people. She wouldn't commit to it. She wouldn't say if she was for or against it. And her argument that her personal opinion didn't matter didn't wash with me, because it does matter. We needed to know before we voted for her. Look, Adam, so what's the story? What do you think the chances are of us getting a vote on this issue? Do you think realistically it's going to happen?
I would like to think so. In my view, I'd like to see, if there is several petitions out there, they come together and I guess submit a master petition, if you like, because I'd really like to see the total numbers that are dead set against the idea of fluoride. As far as a referendum or a poll, it's a pretty costly exercise. Obviously, the administrator has said no; he's not going to entertain that idea for whatever reasons. That's up to him. Again, he's appointed by the state government. He's not an elected representative, so he does have to follow the direction of the state. So in that regard, I don't see that he has an option to put a poll to the community at the next election, unless there was some representations made by our state members, Andrew Stoner and Leslie Williams, to the Health Minister to put the project on hold until such time as there was a poll.
Yeah.
So it is a tricky little situation.
It's a tricky situation. It's also one of those really interesting issues too, mainly from my point of view, not so much about the dangers of fluoride, but more about a community's right to determine an issue like this. Just really quickly, why have you put your hand up, or why are you going to put your hand up to run for council? You saw what happened to the last lot. Do you really want to put yourself through that?
To be honest, I ask myself that every day. It's just one of those burning desires that I've had for forever. Basically, I've worked so hard in the last 4 or 5 years to get up to speed with all the issues of the day.
And give us a bit of a spiel. What's your background? Where are you from? All that sort of stuff.
Well, yeah, I could talk for an hour on that, but I'll keep it brief.
Let's keep it to 30 seconds.
I've owned and operated 5 small businesses in and around the local area over the last 10 or 12 years. I've had input into the private and public sectors through working at Country Energy and also working with youth with disabilities. So I've really tried to diversify my background. At the moment, I sit on 2 boards, one the Willing and Able Foundation and also the Startup Business Development Program, which assists and mentors new business owners through the first 12 months of operation. So I've done a lot in a short space of time, but I think the step up is to counsel and look at issues on a much larger scale, because I reckon I'm ready for the challenge. Yeah,
ready to exercise some influence. Good on you. And I know a few people connected with you, and you've got a good reputation. And listen, I applaud the fact that you're, standing up for our right to vote on an issue like fluoride. So thanks for coming in tonight, Adam.
No problems.
Thanks for listening to Time to Talk. If you've got an opinion about fluoride, this is the time to call. 6585 3456 is our number tonight.
It's time to talk.
You're on the air.
I'm on the air, am I?
You certainly are. You are indeed.
Okay, then all right, fine. Well, do you realise that when you come out of Sydney, and thousands of people migrate out of Sydney over the years, the majority, the first thing you notice when you get up here is how many people have bad teeth. And can you imagine, where else in the world would you want to go where people have got bad and they stand out? They put fluoride in Sydney roughly 40, 50 years ago, and it used to be the same in Sydney. There were bad teeth everywhere. I remember as a child, people had bad teeth. You'd never take any notice of it anymore. It's only this area that has this no situation, because the whole rest of the state are laughing at us because this place is full of bad teeth.
I'm going to interrupt. Can I grab your first name? I should have asked that at the top.
Yeah, Gary.
Gary. So, Gary, what about the fact that let's take as a given that fluoride may be good for teeth, okay? And there's debate about that, but let me hand that.
Yeah, I understand.
Let's work on the assumption that fluoride is good for your teeth, and like I say, that's debatable. What about? Aren't you concerned that fluoride may be being good for your teeth, but be very harmful for other parts of your body, like the brain and the bones?
No, because I don't see 1 million people in Sydney with brain damage.
But don't you see a rise of modern age ailments like
I think there's more
autism and skin rashes and allergies?
You actually eat the food and it goes into your stomach, it goes all through your system. The fluoride is proven. But nobody in Sydney's dying. There's no 1 million people. After 50 years, you would have a major epidemic of some description if fluoride was like that.
But, Gary, there are a lot of unexplained ailments.
Actually laugh about this.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, you're absolutely entitled to your view, and I do appreciate your call.
Absolutely. But as I said, I think that our fellow has entitled that. And if he gets into council, I say good luck to him. We need a change.
Yeah.
I don't believe the old one should be allowed to rerun. But
very quickly, Gary, should we be able to vote on the issue one way or the other?
Put it this way, because Australians love saying no, and that's what they'll say, I'll save you $2 million for a start. I'll guarantee you'll have 70% again, and you won't have gained anything, because you've still got the 60 that don't know anything about fluoride, and they don't.
Okay.
And the 30%, I think, are just that little bit smarter, that understand that fluoride isn't going to hurt you.
Yep.
If so, why are 4 million people in Sydney not having effects over 50 years?
All right,
We're
Gary.
the only ones in the state that haven't got it, and they actually laugh at us because we're so bloody conservative.
Gary, good on you for calling in. I really appreciate your opinion.
It's the old story with Aussies, mate. They love everything but change.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Gary. Thanks for the call. What do you reckon about what Gary has to say? You can give us a call too on 6585 3456. That's the telephone number here tonight.